Shocked. So are bats looking through their ears? Why did God give him eyes? What do people say that the work of one sense is done by another sense? But as a scientist, how can he not tell the results of his experiments? He made up his mind to tell people what had happened. He said that if you see bats going astray when wax is applied to the ears, it seems to Bali that the ears are doing the work of the eyes. Both scientists are making fools of themselves. They are creating unnecessary headaches by saying everything that is contrary to God's rules. Padre and juror wondered whether they had put wax on the bat's eye or their own. After hearing jury's experiments, Pastor Solani once again went to experiment. This time, Spalani made small copper tubes that could be inserted into the bat's ear. When the tubes were inserted into the ears and the bats were released into the Spalani chamber, they flew unhindered. But as soon as the tubes were covered with wax, they flew off in a hurry and hit the strings against the wall. It was a fact that bats go blind as soon as their ears are closed. The priest asserted that jury's conclusions were true. People lost patience and concluded that both scientists were fools. The priest is not teaching the religion and is reasoning contrary to God's rules. They reproached him for engaging in anti-religious whims and killing bats, and finally went to a French scientist named Georges Cuvier, who was known as a famous scholar, and told him about the plight of the priest and the juror. Instead of investigating, Cuvier stoked people's impatience. Blaming the two scientists who said that they fly by looking with their ears, he said his own formula about the sensory sensitivity of bats. According to him, bats have an extraordinary sense of touch. As it flies, the hairs on its wings detect objects that block the air in front of it. Apart from that, the ear works with the eye. It is wrong to say that the nose works for the mouth. He gave a statement that the bats were made so good that they looked strange. The people were relieved that their piety was established again by Cuvier's words. Both Pastor Spalani and jury, who said there was sin, were dismissed as fools. Cuvier's explanations were questioned and tested by people for about 150 years. The bats continued their nocturnal flight unconcerned. What Pastor Spalani said may be a lie, but how true is what Cuvier said? Scientists took up these controversial bat findings again, wondering if they had believed it for 150 years without testing it. When Danish scientist Savin Jegraf surgically removed the tactile nerve from the wings of bats and then let them fly, the bats without tactile sensation avoided obstacles and flew as smoothly as other bats. They flew quickly only when their ears were closed. So the sense of touch of bats has nothing to do with flight. As soon as the ears are closed, the bats lose their way, so the bats' ears must be related to some noise coming from the objects in front of them. But we did not hear any sound from any substance. If so, could the bats themselves be making the noise and causing it to reflect off the objects in front of them? In what other ways can objects communicate their presence to bats? Zegraf thought about this for a long time. Zegraf observed that bats close their mouths slightly before flying. So these bats must be making some noise that we can't hear. As soon as it is reflected from their surroundings, the sun's rays can be reflected to our eyes, creating an image of the outside world. Thinking about all this, Zegraf Swalani's experiments started from another direction. This time he did not wax the bats' ears. Make little hats out of paper and put them on the bats' noses so they don't miss their mouths and let them fly. Zegraf had thought the right way. The bats that couldn't open their mouths were just as shocked at what they saw as the bats that couldn't hear. 1940 AD, when Zegraf published the results of his experiments, 150 years after Swalani first expressed his curiosity about bats, Zegraf came close to understanding the mystical secret of bats. All was not resolved though. It is true that the bat loses its mouth and closes it. But what is this sound that no one hears? What if a bat has ears to hear it? Bats kept flying in the sky. Scientists continued to grapple with their problems.